Hello, and welcome back for another episode of the Guitar Reliquary. Today, I've got something cooked up a little bit different for you. I'm going to be taking you through 7 of the guitar players that are primarily associated with Stratocasters that inspire me to play guitar. And this is all a result of my love for this Stratocaster that I got from my dad. Thank you, Dad, again. And the resulting Strat fever, or what I've titled Strat Psychosis for this video. So I'm going to try to do these in order, but on any given day of the week, they might shuffle around a little bit. The first guy that I'm going to talk about is my number 7, Eric Johnson. So I've talked about Eric Johnson recently in the Eric Johnson Stratocaster video. I've got it sitting on the couch here with me in case I decide to plug it in. Eric Johnson is one of those players that just has his own sound. Nobody sounds like Eric Johnson. You can hear some people who've borrowed from him heavily. I think Joe Bonamassa borrows heavily from Eric Johnson. A lot of people compared him to Clapton at various times, but it was always Eric Johnson that I thought Bonamassa sounded like. And I mean, you have that instantly recognizable beginning to Cliffs of Dover. And, you just know what's coming after that. And, I've picked up a few triad licks that I really like from him, that you hear in Cliffs of Dover. He does the octaves in the Manhattan. And, just really amazing things that here and there I've incorporated into my playing style. Obviously, I'm not a particularly fast guitar player, and we'll get to why that is in a few numbers. But I really do enjoy Eric Johnson. So most people would choose Via Musicom as the album that inspires them from Eric Johnson. That's the one with Cliffs of Dover, with Trademark, High Landrons, all those amazing songs. Some people might choose Venus Isle, which has Manhattan. Manhattan is my favorite Eric Johnson song. But I'm actually going to go with his first album, which is Tones. On the Eric Johnson album Tones, check out standout tracks, The Desert Song, Trail of Tears, and Zap. So Tones is a really amazing record. It's got some just crazy good stuff on it. Friends is on here, The Desert Song, Zap. Really, ones that stay in his set a lot. But the song that gets me is Trail of Tears. The Trail of Tears is just, peak Eric Johnson, if you ask me. And whenever I listen to this record, it makes me want to reach for the Stratocaster and start playing. So if you haven't checked out Tones, I highly recommend that you go check out Tones by Eric Johnson. So moving on to the next guitar player on my list is Jeff Beck. So number 6 is Jeff Beck for me. And I know people are, crying out in rage at this point that I've put Jeff Beck so far down on my list. But Jeff Beck is the guitarist's guitarist. He does things and makes sounds that I have heard no other guitar player do. I've never heard anybody brag that they play like Jeff Beck, because I don't think there's anybody that can manipulate the trem arm in the way that Jeff Beck does. He just has such a unique style, and he mixes so many different genres of music. I mean, he's played rockabilly, he's played, straight rock and roll, he plays jazz fusion, and I, of course, am a huge fan of his jazz fusion work. I'm not even going to attempt to play anything off of Wired here, because I want to talk about the song that got me into Jeff Beck, and the first sort of Jeff Beck song that I ever tried to learn. And that was People Get Ready, where he played that with Rod Stewart. And I just loved the way that he arranged People Get Ready. And, gotta get a little more volume there, but maybe I need a lot more volume. So I just really love that arrangement. And, Rod Stewart sings beautifully on the song. Jeff Beck plays beautifully. He layers that amazing distorted part over it. And it's just really a wonderful version of the song. So that was really what got me into Jeff Beck to start with, and led me eventually to Wired and Blow by Blow and some of the amazing stuff. So if you are a Jeff Beck novice, I highly recommend you pick up a copy of Wired and check out Wired. On Jeff Beck's Wired, check out the standout tracks Lead Boots, Goodbye Pork Pie Hat, and Blue Wind. Every time I hear Blue Wind, it's just incredible. Jeff Beck and Jan Hammer just going at it. So really great song. So moving on to the next guitar player on my list, number 5 is Robin Trower. So Robin Trower is an interesting guy because he, started with Procol Harum, and Procol Harum was a really bit progressive sort of band, and I didn't really gel with them all that much. But Bridge of Sighs is like all of the best parts of Hendrix distilled and made a little bit more modern, in my opinion, even though this album only came out like, 2 or 3 years after Hendrix died. I mean, it was clearly a love letter to Hendrix, but it just has some incredible guitar parts on it. And, they're just so fun to play and to have such unique sounds to them. So obviously Bridge of Sighs is my favorite. I mean, that lick right there, it's such an odd thing, simplistic, but something that I just wouldn't think to put in one of my own songs. And, that's one of the reasons I really love him. Of course, Bridge of Sighs is my favorite song on this, but it's hard to pick one. They're all great. 2 Rolling Stones, a little bit of Sympathy, The Fool in Me, and of course, Day of the Eagle. I mean, Day of the Eagle has to be one of the most crazily picked rock riffs that's come out in the last 50 years. So Robin Trower, Bridge of Sighs. You could also check out BLT, which is Jack Bruce from Cream with Robin Trower, and that's a really phenomenal album. I just picked that up last week at the record store, and I was blown away by it. And if you don't do records, consider doing records. They're very cheap. I think I paid $4 for BLT in excellent condition. So, records are pretty cool. So the next guitarist that I want to talk about is my number 4. And my number 4 is Uli John Roth from the Scorpions. So Uli John Roth is another player that sort of worships at the altar of Hendrix, but gave the Scorpions just this sort of mystic edge that they didn't have before or after. So everyone's familiar with all the great Scorpion songs from the 80s, Rock You Like a Hurricane, Big City Nights, things like that, Wind of Change. But the stuff from the 70s is just so raw, and it's so crazy how many good songs they packed onto this. So I chose this album because it's the greatest hits with Uli John Roth, so it has all the songs that I like on it. But if you had to choose just one, I would probably go with Taken by Force. My favorite song, and the song that really drew me to Uli John Roth, was Sails of Charon. So Sails of Charon is unlike almost everything else in the Scorpions catalog, and has this really wild introduction that I just can't get enough of, no matter how much I listen to it. I mean, who would have come up with such a riff? It's so out there and all played on one string, and it just builds and builds and gets into this crazy rocking track. And for me, it's the pinnacle of Scorpions. The Scorpions have not had a better song than Sails of Charon. But, you know, the Uli John Roth years also produced Virgin Killer and, you know, Speedy's Coming, Pictured Life, Steam Rock Fever, In Trance. So many great songs. If you haven't checked out Uli John Roth era Scorpions, you know, that's a really great place to start. On the best of the Scorpions, check out the standout tracks, Steam Rock Fever, Pictured Life, and The Sails of Charon. So my next artist will surprise very few who know me, and that is Iron Maiden. And more specifically, it is Dave Murray from Iron Maiden. Dave Murray, for me, is probably my favorite metal lead guitar player. So, and I'm stoking controversy right there by calling Iron Maiden metal. I firmly believe they are metal. They have all the attributes of metal, but some people disagree. But Dave Murray has such this fluid playing style and fluid neck pickup tone on his Stratocaster, and it just, every time I hear a Dave Murray solo, I go, wail away, Dave, wail away. I just love the Iron Maiden stuff with Dave Murray, and fortunately, he's been in the band, you know, since the beginning, so I haven't had to have albums without Dave Murray, which is why I like almost all the Iron Maiden albums. So there are so many great songs on this one in particular. I know that other people would choose Peace of Mind or Number of the Beast, or they might choose Power Slave, and those are all phenomenal albums. Somewhere in Time was my favorite album for a very long time, but Seventh Son of a Seventh Son ends up taking it. So Iron Maiden, you know, so many great different riffs. On Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son, check out the standout tracks, Moonchild, Can I Play with Madness, and The Evil That Men Do. I mean, you know, just iconic riffs. You know, Number of the Beast, Wrathchild. I mean, just, you know, you could go on forever talking about Iron Maiden riffs. And those are just a few of the ones that I really love. So that brings us to number 2 on my list. And number 2 is the almighty David Gilmour. So David Gilmour is one of those guitar players that everybody knows and almost everybody loves. I don't think I've ever met anybody who didn't like David Gilmour. I would be instantly suspicious of them if they didn't like David Gilmour. But he is one of the main reasons that I ever wanted to pick up a Strat. So I started off in my journey through music with hard rock, you know, Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, stuff like that. And eventually found Pink Floyd. And at first I wasn't a huge Pink Floyd fan, but the more I listened to it and the more I heard what David Gilmour was doing and with how few notes he was doing it, I was just completely blown away. And again, this is a controversial album choice because many people would say Dark Side, many people would say The Wall, many people would say Wish You Were Here. But my personal favorite is Animals. You know, Pigs, 3 Different Ones is one of my absolute favorite songs. And then, of course, Dogs and Sheep. You know, Dogs has such great guitar work on it. So, yeah, there's just really amazing stuff to be found on Animals. On Animals, listen to the whole thing. And he's another one where you hear what he's doing and you know instantly that it's David Gilmour. I mean, who doesn't know Whoops, gotta have some tone here. I mean, just that 4 notes. I mean, just it's so blues based, but also so unique in the way that it's presented. So, David Gilmour really earns his spot there. And he's also the reason that I try to pull back when I'm playing. It's very easy to get caught up and want to play fast and overplay in a song. And, arguably I've done that many times on the channel already. But I try to pull back. I try to do something melodic and I try to tell a story with it. And that's something that David Gilmour does really well. You want to be vocal in what you're doing. You want to come up with a memorable guitar part. And that's where David Gilmour, to me, reigns supreme. But we are now at the point to talk about my number one absolute reason for picking up a Stratocaster. And this is probably going to be very controversial for people, but that would be Richie Blackmore. And Richie Blackmore has had a career that has more good songs, I think, than people realize. Obviously, Purple is an amazing band with Blackmore in it. They're also amazing with Steve Morse. I love Steve Morse too, but the Blackmore years were raw. They had that classical sort of input and influence, and the whole interplay between John Lord and Richie Blackmore was amazing. And of course, you could have chosen Machine Head here or Perfect Strangers. I personally gravitate towards Perfect Strangers over Machine Head, but my absolute favorite record with Richie Blackmore is Rainbows Rising. Rainbows Rising to me is a masterpiece. There is no other Stratocaster album that can touch Rainbows Rising. And the reason for that is twofold for me. One is that Blackmore is playing, and whenever Blackmore plays, I just want to stop and listen to it no matter what I'm doing. And then the second thing is Ronnie James Dio. Ronnie James Dio is my absolute favorite singer of all time. Rest in peace, Ronnie. I even named my teddy bear Ronnie. So Ronnie James Dio is a big part of that. But this album has 3 totally classic Rainbow songs. I mean, all 6 are amazing, but the 3 classic ones are, of course, Tarot Woman, Starstruck, and Stargazer. And some people would go A Light in the Black in place of Tarot Woman, and I'd be okay with that. But, this has one riff that just, to me, is the heaviest Stratocaster riff I've ever heard on a rock record, and that's the riff for Stargazer. So anybody that can make such a simplistic riff sound so heavy is, in my opinion, a really phenomenal musician. And it's one of my favorite songs. He also has a number of other great Rainbow songs and riffs. I mean, Man on the Silver Mountain. Starstruck. Just so many great riffs from Rainbow and from this album in particular. So that brings us to the end of my 7 Stratocaster players that inspire me to play. Please let me know what you think of my selections. Check out the records, vinyl, CD, streaming, whatever. Just go listen to them and enjoy the great music that's in there. And feel free to share your top 7 Stratocaster players that inspire you in the comments. I'll be curious to see what you folks think. Now, before I sign off, I should give some very honorable mentions for players that I listen to quite frequently, but that didn't quite make the list of those that make me want to pick up the guitar, even though they do, because I always want to pick up the guitar. But I would be remiss to not mention Stevie Ray Vaughan. The album Couldn't Stand the Weather is one of my favorite albums out there for blues music. Eric Clapton. I have a rather unorthodox Eric Clapton choice, which is August. It's the one that has Phil Collins and Nathan East and Greg Phillinganes on it. There's some really great songs on there. The duet with Tina Turner, Tearing Us Apart. Just one of my favorite albums by Clapton. Robert Cray. I'm a huge Robert Cray fan. Strong Persuader is an album that gets on heavy rotation. But he wasn't quite in the top 7 for me. Maybe he was number 8. I like other Stratocaster players too. The Who, Yngwie Malmsteen, all kinds of great players out there. So anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please check out my other videos, like and subscribe. I'm thinking that the next video might be some Les Paul lunacy, where I take you through the 7 Les Paul players that make me want to pick up a guitar. So stay tuned for that. Have a great day.